Hello and welcome to the Cricketers Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Tim Williams. We're here to recap the world in cricket and what a week it's been. Why this week in particular? Well, because a star was born in Sam Konstas, who will rise up and he's going to save the demise of the Australian batting lineup over the next, I'm going to say, at least 2 decades. It could go 3 decades. Who knows? Here to talk about that with me, Cricket Australia commentator, former Sydney Sixers media manager, and he's a little bit under the weather, so he's putting in a bit of a Dean Jones India performance in this one. Maxi Bryden. Maxi, how are you, mate?
G'day, Tim. G'day, listeners. Mate, I've definitely seen better days, but look, really excited about the first test. Can the Aussies beat India? I don't know if I had a mental blank or was maybe slept through the last kind of couple of weeks to see if I've missed anything, but should be a really good series.
Yes, very excited. Obviously, kicking off on Friday, the day-night pink ball test in Adelaide. And my next guest for today's show, it's interesting. I had my intro set up for the big fella saying that he's a bloke that looks more like Marcus Stoinis than Marcus Stoinis. And then we get on for the podcast and he's just got this fresh fade. I'm like, Rando, are you trying to look more like Marcus Stoinis, I should say, or how are you doing this?
Oh mate, I had to go the look, especially after the comparisons last week. I thought, you know what, it's summer. I got to knuckle down, take a few photos with the fans, claim I'm Marcus Stoinis. You could probably do a social bit on me, just walking around the Sydney Test, and people just coming up to me saying that's Marcus Stoinis, and hopefully it'll go. But yeah, trying the new fade. Hopefully it looks good. Would love some compliments in the comments because my girlfriend laughed at me for 10 minutes straight when I walked in yesterday with it. So yeah, no, it's a new look. Hopefully it helps my cricketing knowledge and game.
We've gone about this podcast the whole wrong way. We should have just told Marcus Stoinis that, like, sold as if Marcus Stoinis was a regular on the podcast. We could have cut him in on the advertising profits or something like that. I don't know. Found some way to like get him to agree with it and just said, we've got the big Stoin on us every week. Anyway, guys, just to read it, I'll only do this one more time, but we do want to just confirm and reiterate why we are here and what the Cricketers Playbook podcast is all about. Of course, we're expanding outside the realm of fantasy sport, which SC Playbook is predominantly known for. The aim of the podcast, basically, is to be the T20 of podcasting, to keep you informed about all the big debates in the game and help fuel your pub debates with your mates. Give you a bit of ammo when you're going toe-to-toe with a mate about whether Steve Smith's got another year left in him, 2 years, 5 years. We don't know. We'll give you every argument and how to beat it. The panel and myself, we're cricket nuffs. We love the game. We love to follow what's going on around the world of cricket. We want to know how Faf du Plessis went in the Abu Dhabi T10 tournament. Disclaimer, killed it. Still got it, the old boy. And how Nathan Lyon performed in the county cricket season last year. But it's hard to do. There's so much cricket that goes on around the world. So many competitions, both domestic and international. So we're going to recap all the best performances from around the world each and every week and have a bit of fun in the process, making sure we keep out the boring stuff and focus on the highlight reel moments. Now, on today's show, we're going to preview the major talking points leading into the Australia v India second test in Adelaide. Is Scotty Boland the next man up? What do Australia's quick bowling stocks look like when the big three retire? The appeal this week. Sammy Konstas. When will the time be to give him a crack? Should he debut this series? The absolute prodigy out of Sydney. The boys will go toe-to-toe in that one. Rando's going to have his stats trivia, collating some of the best data in sport. He finds the best of it, turns it into trivia, then essentially I spank Maxi at trivia as per last week. We'll also be touching on a little bit of the England and New Zealand series as well. Buff Liam and a few comments around the greatness or lack thereof of Joe Root. A bit to talk about there out of the World Test Championships. 2 with England's upset victory. And then, of course, we'll go into the best performances in world cricket from the past week to name our World 11 with the race to the mace heating up for the upcoming summer of cricket. Boys, enough out of me. Let's get into it. Australia versus India. It kicks off on Friday in Adelaide. Friday afternoon, that is obviously the day-nighter. Josh Hazlewood out, injured. Not believed to be too serious an injury. We're crossing our fingers and toes for that one. Anyway, Scotty Boland, he looks like he'll be the next man up. Sean Abbott has also been called into that squad. Max, I'll start with you. Is Scott Boland the man for the job?
Thanks, Timo. And mate, I think he is. And it was actually alongside Sean Abbott. We also saw Brendan Doggett, former Queenslander, now South Australian, also called into that test squad. 2 really good bowlers, but I think when you're looking at what Hazlewood brings to the game, that metronomic ability to consistently hit a line and length. There's no more like-for-like player in the game than Big Barrel Boland. His record in Australia speaks for itself, so very easy call, and I'm really hoping that he has a big game in Adelaide.
Rando, what are your thoughts, mate? Was he the obvious selection? Obviously, guys like Jai Richardson, who's in the frame but always under an injury cloud himself. Michael Nisa, I think he is under an injury cloud as well, and also at 34 years old. Was Boland the man for you?
Yeah, I think as Maxi touched on, he's a proven test bowler in this field. He's got a strike rate of a wicket every 33 balls in Australia, 28 wickets in his 12 innings. So, I mean, I just can't move past him. The only thing that I would say is potentially, and it's a conversation we had last week, is he underdone coming into this test match? I mean, we talked about fatigue hitting the Australian lineup. He's bowled just 28 overs in Shield cricket. He had 29 overs in that India A game as well. Only took 1 wicket for, I think, 86 runs across those overs. Bowled 8 no balls as well. So gave up a few sundries on top of that. But, I mean, when you look at the competition, you're basically putting untested, untried players ahead. I mean, Sean Abbott's probably the main one. That'd be a hell of a storyline that he debuts on the test 10 years on from Philip Hughes's anniversary. So that would be one hell of it. But he's also been a really proven bowler in the Shield cricket side. He's got 13 wickets in 4 innings. Of course, he bowled against Pakistan, came back as well, got 30 runs in that last ODI game too. And then, of course, the man we talked about at nauseum last week, Bo Webster, another great option there who took 6 wickets in that India A game, also scored 46 runs in that second inning. So Abbott and, of course, Webster, good with the bat and the ball, but Scotty Boland, I mean, you just really can't look past him regardless on how much cricket he's played in the last 6 months.
Yeah, Webster, more of a batting all-rounder. Sean Abbott, of course, a bowling all-rounder, but very handy with the willow himself. Maxi, are we anticipating that to be the only change? Scotty Boland in for Josh Hazlewood there. I mean, if we lose this test, there's probably going to be personnel changes probably around that batting order. The temptation for a Webster or an Abbott or whatever it might be, just the Boland move at this stage, you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the reports that we're getting from in and around the team suggest there's going to be a bit of a fitness test that Mitch Marsh has got to pass as well to resume his spot in the order. He had an ankle injury, as you mentioned, last week's pod, was getting a fair bit of treatment in that second bowling innings for Australia. So there is potential that if he's not right to go, we could see another change, potentially Josh Inglis or that man, Bo Webster, come into the team. Again, I'm hearing that Josh Inglis is probably slightly ahead of Bo, should that be the case, but we're really not going to know until, I'd say, 24 hours out ahead of the game. And look, we did also speak a lot about the batting order and potentially Marnus Labuschagne and his place on the team last week. I was very happy to take home my win in the review, even if I didn't do well in my pet subject of trivia. But I think that Marnus, particularly in this game, it looks like there's going to be no change. So he's under pressure, but I don't think there'll be any other changes to the side.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. And guys, if you haven't listened to the Cricketers Playbook podcast from last week, the first episode of the summer, we are, of course, on YouTube and Apple, Spotify, wherever you want to view us, listen to us, etc., etc. If you do enjoy the podcast, but jump in and check out. There's obviously a big recap of the first test, among other things, in that one. Max, I'll go back to you, mate. The question begs now. Pat Cummins, 31 years old. Mitch Starc, 35 in January. Josh Hazlewood, he's 34 in January. Once sort of the first of these quicks and, the remainder start to fall off the perch over the next few years and inevitably retire from international cricket, with the way their form goes, it could be a while. But whether that is retirement on their own accord, whether they want to keep playing, we don't know. But, they're getting towards certainly the back end of their career. Who's next in line, mate? Obviously, you've got Scotty Boland there. If we get a fit Jai Richardson, Michael Ness is obviously another option there. Terrific swing bowler, terrific talent, but he's 34 years old himself and has his injury troubles. Lance Morris, one of the more upcoming quicks in Australian cricket, pretty rapid. Who do you think is the next generation of Aussie? I'm not going to say quicks. Who's the next man up?
Thanks, Timo. Mate, all of the names you mentioned there are certainly guys in contention. But I think, though, that there's potentially a bit of a talent gulf when it comes to the bowling unit that hasn't really been as discussed in depth as what we're seeing with the batters, because we haven't had consistent injuries to multiple big boys in the same season. When it comes to the next Cabs, though, probably the guy who's going to be a generational, or could be a generational talent, is really Jai Richardson. That's all, provided he can sort of keep his shoulder in his socket. Lance Morris, very good player. He's had some really, really good results in the Shield. We don't know how he'll go at international level, but certainly he's got a decent skill set. And beyond that, we're sort of waiting for the next couple of guys to put their hands up. Really like the look of Will Sutherland, if he can continue to build his game. Guys like Mitch Perry have done well for Australia, Jordan Buckingham as well. But we might be looking at some good players coming through after this. We're still really waiting for that next guy to put his hand up to show that he's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we've been blessed with riches of quick bowling stocks over the years. So a few question marks around a few at the moment. But again, those question marks are generally fitness and keeping on the field and dealing with side strains and all these sorts of injuries that quick bowlers do these days. Rando, what about for yourself, mate? Who do you see as next in line?
I think Maxi basically sweep the floor with all the names that are possibly up and coming from there. I think in the immediate future, you got guys like Michael Neser who are getting on in age as well. So that could be in trouble in terms of like potential when Nathan Lyon gets on as well. We're looking for more bowlers, like a kid like Todd Murphy. You also got youth like Sam Elliott coming through as well. He's leading the Shield in wickets taken this season on top of that. So there's plenty of names that you can go through. But even when I look at some of the established names of the domestic scene, they have really waited their times. They're now 30-odd, where I think I look back at them thinking that they've never hit the international scene, that they're still mid-20s. But no, they have aged. So potentially in terms of talent losing, I think Sam Elliott, Todd Murphy, under 25 years of age, that could be potential talent for the future that we could blood. But I know that Australia like to do that in the limited overs scene rather than the Test cricket scene.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Good shouts there. And I've just it's hard to fathom the idea of Nathan Lyon retiring from Test cricket and just not being in the picture. So I just feel like Gaz the GOAT. He's going to go forever. And let's not deal with that for at least another decade. Boys, I just think Jai Richardson, I think he's such an unbelievable talent. We've obviously seen him in the Test arena already. I was actually at the Adelaide Pink Ball Test, the Ashes a couple of years ago, I think it was, that he played. Was it his debut, Maxi, or... I'm just trying to remember.
Ooh, good question. I'm not sure if it was debut, but I remember having a beer with you and watching him and Michael Neser run around for Australia. So very good player, swings the ball both ways, good pace. He's got all the tools to make a mark.
Test debut was Sri Lanka in Brisbane in 2019. So Adelaide was not his debut, but yeah, I think he's an absolute star. He just cannot keep himself fit. We saw him pop his shoulder out celebrating a wicket in domestic cricket the other day. But yeah, look, Test cricket is taking 11 wickets at 22 average. First class, very similar there. He's got an average of 20.95 in state cricket. So it's such a gun. I'd love to see him get a crack at some point. Now, boys, moving on, looking at it from an Indian perspective, and we were chatting off air about the best Indian angles to target going into this Test match, the second Test. And we were sitting there saying, is the focus Australia's batting demise and why we're struggling for runs and how the first Test was such a disaster? Maxi, are we simply not giving Jasprit Bumrah enough credit for just how brilliant a bowler this man is and how much he relishes the Australian conditions? Again, you can expand it to the whole Indian attack because they were terrific, but it all came off the back of the brilliance of Bumrah, the pressure he built, the inability for us to get him away. What do you reckon?
In short, yes. He's an absolute superstar, and I thought that his performance and his ability to rip through our top order in both innings was really the difference in the match. And on a side note, I was absolutely devastated that he wasn't our player of the week last year and Jaiswal jumped ahead. But I guess, hey, it's about his game. But I think, I can let Rando talk about the numbers and what he's on track to achieve in terms of his career. But the skill set that he possesses and his ability to combine the absolute best traits of some of the greatest fast bowlers that Australia has ever seen, I think, are what make him so unbelievable. And really, for the rest of this series, you got to think that it's him versus the Australian top order is going to essentially decide who wins. Picture it now. If Australia loses the toss in Adelaide and have to bat under lights in their first innings on the first day against Jasprit Bumrah, would you be like? I don't think anyone would say that being 3 for spit again would shock anyone. This guy has got every single tool and weapon that you'd want from a fast bowler, and it's been distracting that we've had so many conversations about the Australians when we should just be talking and hopefully enjoying what is one of the greatest fast bowlers to ever do it, coming down here and doing what few have ever done and being dominant in foreign conditions.
Yeah. Facing Jasprit Bumrah, the swinging ball in a night session, shining, moving all over the place. The prospect of it has been giving me nightmares the past week since that last test finished. Maxie, were you on the topic of our 3-2-1 voting last week and our race for the mace, and you didn't get the 2? Were you a batter? Were you a bowler? I picture you as a big Suleiman Ben, the old West Indian, the tall off spinner. That's what I see you as being. What were you?
You've picked that like a nose. I think when I was in my under-12s career, was certainly open the batting and just be a dour opening bat, and then sort of come in with my tweakers.
Of course.
And certainly as an adult, the batting dropped off, and the bowling sort of kept going. But the listeners won't sort of be able to tell this as well. But being 6'7", Suleiman Ben is a fantastic comparison for people who are absolutely wasting their potential that the big man upstairs gave them. And just bowling some absolute straight doorknobs.
Yeah, I was a batting all-rounder, hence there's going to be a bit of preference towards batters and what they achieve. Rando, what were you, right arm, good sword, or what did you do with the ball? With the willow, with the ball, what was your preference?
Batted 8, didn't bowl, I think. No, I was trying to do some off spin, but I was definitely more of a fielder. I love being in the field, taking catches, like Glenn Phillips himself. But yeah, I think I was definitely built for fielding. I look forward to that more than bowling or batting, that's for sure.
Well, Rando's World Player of the Week is going to be Glenn Phillips based on that. We'll get to Glenn Phillips shortly, actually, in that unbelievable catch. Rando, what's your take on India, mate? Is Maxi letting off the Australian batting order a little bit easy, or is it a case of, no, we need to sit back and admire the greatness of Jasprit Bumrah? Again, not taking away from the rest of the Indian attack, but it was the Bumrah show, and there's every chance it will be for the rest of the series. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Indian attack definitely complements Bumrah to really be that pressure cooker. He was a captain coming into this, obviously coming off that demoralising test series against New Zealand at home, then to come to Australia and be able to put on the bowling performance that he did. Looking at his averages across different countries, he's under 20 in basically every country he's played except for England and New Zealand. New Zealand, he's only bowled in 2 matches in that one, so we can forgive him there. England, he has a 26 average. But in India, he averages 17. In Australia, he averages 18. It's absolutely insane and mind-boggling. And we'll talk about players being accountable for, not performing in different countries a bit later. But I thought this one for Bumrah was quite unbelievable. I think you got to really give credit to this Indian attack and not just point blame on the Australian batting lineup.
Yes. Joe Root can't get runs in Australia. Not a great, according to the great Buff Lehman. We'll get to that shortly, though. And I'm a bit mixed, boys. I think it's a one-off test. We sit there and we've got to, give credit when due to Bumrah in the Indian attack. If it's a trend that follows throughout the series and we can't find answers, that's a case of, well, no. Like the Australian batting attack, we have to be better. We've seen what they've produced, et cetera, et cetera. So I just can't wait to see how the rest of this series plays out. It's set up so well. As bad as it was from an Australian perspective, it's really set up the remainder of the series. Boys, time for the appeal, and I can't wait for this one. I've been waiting all week for it. Sam Konstas, the prodigy, the 19-year-old from Sydney. He had a ton for the Australia under-19s. He had twin tons versus South Australia to start the Sheffield Shield season, including a 152 in that. 73 not out for Australia A versus India A earlier in November. And then during the week, 107 off 97 for Australia A against India A in Canberra. That was against Siraj, Rana, Krishna, Sundar, Reddy, Jadeja. Unbelievable that the kid is so special. India did win, for reference, that game by 6 wickets. We continued to play all of their batsmen into form. Jaiswal, 45 more runs because he needed it. Rahul, 27, and Shubman Gill, 50. They both retired. Sharma not played into form on return, 3 runs. But Reddy, Sundar, Jadeja, they all got runs as well. So they're coming in hot into Adelaide. The question, boys, and the appeal, though, should Sam Konstas debut in this Australia v India series, or is it too soon? Maxi, you're in camp. Yes, you love the kid. He's a Sydney boy, so no wonder. What have you got for us, mate?
I think if you're good enough, that you're old enough. And that has been the debate against Sam Konstas so far, is that he's young and he hasn't necessarily had the experience under his belt. But what we have seen throughout this year and also just throughout his current junior career is that this guy is a century maker. And these guys, players who are like that, they don't grow on trees. This was a guy who jumped in that. What really hasn't been spoken about, I guess, in that Prime Minister's 11 game was not only the calibre of the bowling attack that he was against almost the entire Test match attack from Perth, minus the likes of Jasprit Bumrah. But the fact that almost every other teammate that he was versing failed. Like, this is a guy who can stand up to the test. And I think that the sooner that we get him into the Test match arena, the better for all involved. We've just spoken about the age of the bowlers. The batters aren't getting any younger either. And I think that there's no reason why that we have to lose like even a McSweeney to get a Konstas in, but this guy needs to be around the Test match squad, and particularly if this series looks over after the Brisbane Test, but with the way that Bumrah's going, again, might not shock anyone. Why not get a game into this player and get ahead of the next series that we've got to win, be it in Sri Lanka or even against England in the Ashes out here next summer?
All right. Before I move on to Rando and get his rebuttal, Maxi, let's not get hypothetical in the sense of if the series is gone. I think if the series is gone and we're down 3-0, you just give the kid a run, because what do you got to lose, really, aside from, I suppose, scarring him for the rest of his career? Let's say the series is on a knife's edge. We win one, they win one. You know, it's on the line for all 5 tests. But Marnus and McSweeney are battling. But it's on the line. Is it still like get him in there, or is it going to be if Australia were, cross the fingers and toes that doesn't happen, were to be gone and they played him in the 4th or 5th test?
I think either scenario. There's no bad time to get this guy into the Australian Test cricket side. Yes, we do have to deal with injuries and we do have to deal with form, unfortunately. As we said on last week's show, guys like Marnus, they've been out of form for a while. So I think that either scenario works. I would absolutely love to get the opportunity to see Konstas to get in his hometown of the SCG in the 5th test. But if it were to come before that, that would also make me stoked.
And I'll get your
better yet, getting this guy around the Test squad as well keeps him away from Big Bash cricket, which is potentially what his 6 weeks of could be if that isn't the case. And I'm not necessarily sure that running around playing a bit of T20 cricket is going to be the best preparation for a reserve batter for the Australian Test squad. That's where I'd be getting him to the squad in Adelaide as soon as this next Sheffield Shield round is over, and keeping him with the squad over the rest of the summer.
Yeah, he's flamboyant enough as it is. We don't need to get him into any more Big Bash cricket and getting even more wild. Rando, what's your take on it, mate? Because I suppose the thing's going in Maxi's favour in terms of giving Konstas a run at some point is that, firstly, he's in sensational form. Secondly, he's an opening bat, which we are crying out for at the moment. On the flip side, Rando, he's a 19-year-old with a handful of games. He's coming up against this unbelievable Indian attack, namely Jasprit Bumrah. You don't want to break a bloke too early in their career. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think it might be a bit too early for Konstas to get in. I'm totally for him being around the squad and getting, batting in the nets, getting in that preparation, getting himself ready, almost like in rugby league when you see an 18th, 19th man with the squad just slowly building up, making sure he's mentally prepared to play a Test match. But the kid turned 19 in October. That's the thing of it. I mean, the West Tigers won a grand final without him being born yet. So there's plenty of comparisons that way of how young he is. Of course, his form is great, and I completely acknowledge that, Maxi, when you say form definitely succeeds age. But you look at the 19-year-olds that have come out for Australia and played. You got Pat Cummins and Ashton Agar, the only ones in the last 50 years who have played at 19 or younger. Of course, Pat Cummins, record speaks for himself, great, but he was bowling, not really much of a batter. Starting in an opening, having an opener at 19 is a scary thought. You got to go back to, I think, Neil Harvey way back in 1948. He has the best average of any teenager. He averaged 75, hit 153 at 19. That's a long time ago. Since then, you've got players like Sachin Tendulkar, Shiv Chandapal, as well, batting at 19 and having an average over 50. I mean, Tendulkar had 8 tons before 20, which blows my mind. So I don't think he is a Tendulkar Chandapal like just yet. I think he just needs to buy his time a little bit more. But I think having him in the squad, getting himself prepared and being alongside some of Australia's greatest cricketers of all time, and getting in that preparation before a game will definitely help in the future. But I just think it's a bit too early.
Very tight one, boys. Very, very tight one, because I think it'll be a much easier one to have in a week's time once we've known how the order have performed. And obviously going back to Shield cricket, if you can put more runs on the board, I think you just do it. I think it's a no-brainer, as you said, both of you agreed on, Rando, yourself as well. Get him in around the squad. Get him in there, learn the ways, learn what it takes to be an Australian Test cricketer, get him in the nets, doing all those sorts of things. Whether or not he's ready, those stats around the lack of 19-year-olds and the fact that the two were Cummins and Agar, they're bowlers. It's like, well, very different, very, very different. I am going to award this to Maxi very narrowly.
I call that a winning streak. And hey, I also copped the West Tigers mention as well. So it's been a great day for me.
Yeah, shout out.
I thought that was the final nail in the coffin as well, but it worked out well.
Shout out to our Indian listeners who are saying, shut up about the West Tigers and get back to the cricket. Yeah, look, I just feel that if we come out this test and Marnus and/or McSweeney don't perform and struggle for runs, I'm just going, what do we got to lose? Especially if we were to lose it. Again, we'll have a great debate about this in a week's time, and we'll have more information, more circumstantial evidence on who gets runs, who doesn't, how does he go in Shield cricket. But I just watching him in that innings down at Marnus Oval in Canberra, he was sensational. And the difference is, and as Maxie alluded to, it was against their whole attack minus Jasprit Bumrah. So I say get him in there, because if McSweeney or Labuschagne are going to be in there and they're going to get no runs themselves, well, it might as well be a 19-year-old getting a bit of experience. So I've gone that way. Boys, New Zealand versus England. England won that first test over in NZ by 8 wickets. Bryden cast 10 wickets for the match. Kane Williamson, scores of 93 and 61 on return to the team. Before we get into Buff Lehman's comments on Joe Root, Rando, a little update on the World Test Championships, because with Australia's loss, South Africa getting a win up, England beating New Zealand, some point deductions. It's changed up a fair bit over the past week.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're Ben Stokes, who doesn't pay attention to the championship table, then you wouldn't know what's going on and who's in contention. Of course, there are 5 teams now. You got South Africa, India, Sri Lanka. Well, India basically should get it unless they lose a couple more games in Australia. You got Sri Lanka, Australia, of course, as well in there. New Zealand's loss, definitely a big dampener on their preparations. Basically puts it out of their hands to try and make it. They've got to win the next 2 tests against England and then depend on results from other teams around the country. South Africa look like a good shot here, especially after they dismantled Sri Lanka. If they can do that in the second test, they got Pakistan for 2 tests at home to finish off the series and could potentially be in that final thing. Of course, Sri Lanka, that could be a finals-like test series when we go over there to see who gets that second spot. So plenty of build-up heading into the World Test Championships. Of course, New Zealand, the big thing, they got points deducted for a slow over rate. They were 3 overs, I believe, over that. Ben Stokes, he wasn't happy, even though only a week earlier he said it doesn't matter and he doesn't care about the ICC or the World Test Championship. He came out on his Instagram story saying, good on you, ICC. Finished the game with 10 hours of play still left as well. So Very interesting stuff. And even more interesting to that is the match referee was the great David Boone. So maybe he had a hand in preventing New Zealand having a final spot there for the Aussies. But very interested to hear your take, guys, on what you think of this whole World Test Championship. Obviously, for the teams that are in contention, very exciting. But for teams like England, I wouldn't be surprised if they have a slow over rate next test as well, because they don't really care anymore. They had 19 of their 28 championship points lost during last year's Ashes series as well because of a slow over rate. Is it just the fact that they just like winning games? The fact that they're like Coldplay and they can't be number one every week? What's the go here?
I love, firstly, that good old Booney, he's still probably having the biggest impact as an Australian batsman on our team and our Test Championship credentials, because he's the only one doing anything for us at the moment. Maxie, I'll throw to you, mate. What's your take on the whole situation?
I love the context that the Test Championship provides to a calendar year, but Lord knows you need a degree in accounting or finance to really be able to follow exactly what's happening. I think that, you know, a lot of the news and media publications do a good job of telling people what's to happen, and I think that that's good, right? Basically, what we know is win your games at home, and you're a good chance. Take one or two away from home, and you're an amazing chance of making the final. So I do really, really like the concept, albeit I think that it certainly gets a lot more exciting as we get closer and closer to the end of it, once all the permutations really come to the surface.
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. At the end of the day, win Test cricket and you'll be in the World Test Championship final. But I just think it adds another layer of interest to it. And it's, you know, the one-off test they play every few years. It's a great concept. It's very interesting. You know, we're trying to keep Test cricket alive. We love it. We're passionate about it. Lots of people are. But, you know, there's so much competition from shorter form cricket, namely T20, and we can't just rest on the laurels and traditions of Test cricket, because unfortunately it won't survive like that. So they're going to have to find innovations, and I think the World Test Championship is fantastic, and there's huge bragging rights going up for grabs in that the one-off test every few years as well. So big fan of it. Boys, Darren Lehman, the former Australian coach, boof. Quote on Joe Root during the week. He's come under a bit of fire. His quotes were, he's a rung below Steve Smith, Virat Kohli and Kane Williamson for that reason. They've made runs all over the world in difficult conditions against different oppositions, and that's the only thing stopping Joe Root. I think he's a great player, but is he in that upper echelon? I don't have him in that realm. I think you've got to make hundreds all around the world. Smith does, Williamson does, Kohli has, Rohit Sharma has. I mean, they're world-class players. Root doesn't have a century in Australia, is what he's alluding to, in 27 innings, and has scored 892 runs at an average of 35.68 with 9 half centuries. He's England's all-time leading run scorer. He currently ranks on the 5th on the list of leading run scorers in Test cricket. And Buff Lehman did later clarify on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, that he does think that Joe Root is a great of cricket. However, but if he wants to hit that upper echelon among those men, he needs to hit a ton in Australia, which he'll have the opportunity to do next year. Maxi, fair or unfair from Buff?
Oh, mate. These comments I find pretty funny, just in the sense that it's that real sort of old school generation past arrogance where it's like, yeah, but what do you do against our boys? You know, like the Lehman era Australians are so happy to just write off any achievement that doesn't happen in front of their own eyes in an Australian Test match venue, which is just so ridiculous. Like, we're talking about the all-time leading run scorer here for England in games. This is a bloke who's got over 30 Test centuries and has done it in multiple countries, just not here. And yes, it's really funny during the Ashes when they're at home, when the stats come out, and we laugh at Joe when he gets out after 50 or just before 50 without 3 figures next to his name. But not calling him a great at the game or saying that this one statistical anomaly in this man's career is preventing him from being a great, I think is ridiculous. Joe Root's a great player, and as much as it pains me to say it, I wouldn't say it in an Ashes year, mind you. I think he will go down as a great.
To be fair, Maxie, he said he's a great. He just didn't say he's in the echelon of those other boys. Rando, what do you reckon, mate?
I think it's a random comment from Buff Lehman. I don't know if he knew that Australia aren't playing England this series. Great comment for next year, but he's gone very early with this call. I mean, I think more so he's probably looked at Joe Root being the world's number one batter above the likes of Kohli, Williamson, and Steve Smith. But you just look at his averages away from England. He's over 45 in every single country he's played in, except for Australia and Bangladesh. And Bangladesh, he only had 4 innings, so that can be forgiven. He did score 50 in one of those games too. So I think that's really tough on. But then you look at the players and the echelon of like Steve Smith, 9,702 runs at 56.41 average, 32 centuries, half of which he scored away from home, 8 in England and Wales. You got Kane Williamson, 8,881 runs at 54.48, 32 centuries, 13 of which were away from home. And then King Kohli, 16 of his 30 tons away from home, 9,145 runs. He's only had 2 test centuries in England, which could pull him a little bit lower than the Smith and Williamson, not to set fire to our entire audience. But I think that these guys obviously doing it in every country definitely helps their cause. But I mean, Joe Root, you can't take away from the fact what he's achieved in the game. I mean, Darren Lehman wishes he could have achieved that in his short-lived Australian career. So I find it very, very ironic that those words are coming from his mouth, but and also a bit too premature when we've still got a year to go before the Ashes lead up.
Yeah, look, similar sentiments from me, boys. He's a great. He's in the echelon of those other boys mentioned, and as you said, Maxie, it was the one statistical anomaly in his career that he sort of picked out. That being said, I think there's more merit to it than you boys give it credit to. In that, the fact is, he's an English cricketer. You're measured on your performances in Ashes series, particularly away from home, and he hasn't got a ton down here in plenty of opportunities. And I think there's a lot of weight that goes into that. So, look, I'm not going to go as hard as Buff and say that he's not in the other boys' tier because it is a one statistical anomaly. And you can find something for any player in the world. And you say, oh, because of this, he's not in their echelon. He is. However, Maxie, back to you. He needs a ton, like, to really cement his legacy. And he's always going to be an English grade. He's going to be in that conversation among the best of his era. And, there's the big 4 players that we've mentioned. I love that he also threw in Rohit Sharma as well, just as a bit more salt in the wounds for him. But, Maxie, he needs a ton down here, I think, badly.
Yeah, look, it's only going to help. And look, I think that now that particularly when South Australia's favourite sons, Buff, has come out with these comments who say it's not going to happen at Adelaide Oval and the Pink Test next year. So I'm to be honest, it's really, really fantastic to be talking about the Ashes and being able to ignore just a little bit of the absolute bin fire that was the first test for the Aussie so far. So, mate, why don't we make the rest of this podcast just an entire preview for next year's Ashes?
Yeah, well, if we get done in the second test, we might just stop talking about Australia v England and go ahead to the Ashes. Boys, last one on the England versus New Zealand series. Glenn Phillips. It's up there, that hanger in the gully, among the greatest catches I've ever seen. We see pearlers year in, year out, all different formats, etc. It was unbelievable. Noted as one of the best fielders already in world cricket. There was no fluke about it. The reaction time, he's horizontal. Not only is he airborne, he's about 1.5 meters off the freaking ground. What we're going to talk about, I've got a few examples here, and you're simply going to say which catch was better. Maxie, you'll start with you, mate. Glenn Phillips or the infamous Glenn McGrath catch at Adelaide Oval down at, I think it was fine leg, the big lunging, diving one. I can't remember where it was exactly, but whose was better?
Oh, mate, I still remember where I was when Glenn McGrath that catch, running about 50 metres along the boundary. Yeah. And it wasn't even just so much the amazing full-length diving effort bobbled from his right hand into his left to hang on to it. It was the fact that McGrath was literally one of the worst fielders Australia ever had when that catch came. But having said that, I think Glenn Phillips, for me, slightly ahead of his namesake Glenn McGrath on that one. So I'm going to give it to Phillips.
Glennie would have been shaking, as he always did when he got out for like another duck in his career, and he'd shake his head on the way off as if he'd expected it not to happen. He would have shaken his head, shouldn't have been a bobble in there, should have been cleaner. Rando, Glenn Phillips or Glenn McGrath?
The Battle of the Glens, I'm going to take Glenn Phillips purely because of the reaction time that he had closer in from the bat, just the height there. But obviously, Glenn McGrath giving average Australians something to look forward to, something to aspire to with that diving effort.
Love the great Glennie McGrath, iconic, but it's Glenn Phillips by a mile. Glenn Phillips or Ben Stokes at the ODI World Cup against Pakistan in England. Again, tough one as an Australian looking on, but one of the all-time great catches from Ben Stokes. In front of the crowd, he turns around and just basically salutes him and says, yeah, I'm the man. Maxi, Glenn Phillips or Ben Stokes?
This one's another tight one. I think I'm going to lean towards Phillips, and that's for two reasons. One, you could argue that as great as the Ben Stokes catch was, that he was out of position, and if he was a little bit further towards the boundary, then he wouldn't have had to make that effort. And secondly, I think that as long as for how long the ball was in the air for the Stokes catch, he had time to add that little bit of mayo, whereas the Phillips catch is mayo-free. It's just pure reaction. So I'm going to go Phillips.
Rando, Phillips or Stokes?
Yeah, I'm going to take Glenn Phillips. A great catch from Ben Stokes in front of his home crowd in a Cricket World Cup. But I just thought Phillips, he's just basically jumped in the air and dived left. That's all he's had reaction time for. Whereas, at least as Maxi's point, Stokes had time to retract the steps that he was out of position for and still managed to take the catch.
Yeah, much tighter here, but I think Glenn Phillips, Stokes was brilliant, but he said it's all reaction times for me is everything when you're talking about the best catches of all time. Glenn Phillips, Maxi, Glenn Phillips or Tubby Taylor in the slips, kicking it back to himself. Obviously an iconic Australian moment. Who have you got?
Yeah, look, I think in this one, I'm going to go with the Kiwi again, Glenn Phillips, and mostly just because I think that what I loved about the Phillips catch was that it's the type of thing that typically requires to have a body of water underneath you. These are the ones at the barbecue that someone's giving you an edge and you're diving in the pool full length to try and sort of pull off, whereas Tubby Taylor was kind of like more not the body of water underneath you, but maybe a couch, some Dorito crumbs all over your chest after you just drop chip and you sort of flick it back up to your mouth. You look around to see if anyone else sort of caught that amazing bit of skill. Tubby was great, but Phillips was greater.
Rando, Phillips or Taylor?
Once again, I thought Tubby Taylor doing extraordinary stuff for ordinary people with that little kick up. But as Maxi said, it's a couch party trick all the time. I got to take Glenn Phillips over the athleticism there.
Boys, the final one on the list, and this is the one where I'm going away from Glenn Phillips, and I think this could be the greatest catch of all time. Glenn Phillips or Paul Collingwood's hanger. If you haven't seen it, Paul Collingwood for England against Australia. It was catching Matty Hayden, who belted one to him at, can't remember if it was point or if it was at square leg, but unbelievable. And the way they both did it. They both project themselves off the ground, but Collingwood had to do it to get higher, to reach the ball. It's arguably the greatest catch of all time. I went Paul Collingwood. Maxi, who do you have?
It's a very good question, and I'd be tempted to almost give it a tie because I think in their own regards, they're both worldies. I think I am going to go with Collingwood. And the reason for that is that Matt Hayden's an absolute brute. And I dare say that the ball came off the bat just that little bit faster than potentially Ollie Pope flicking one Phillips' way in the gully. Point's a really difficult position, and his reaction to pull that in above his head was great. Of course, Paul Collingwood could have simply been taller. That would have been less mayo on that catch. But, he can't help that. So I'm going to give this one to Collingwood. But, geez, two absolute worldies.
Pommies in their mayo, dead set. Rando, Phillips or Collingwood for you?
I have to take Paul Collingwood. I remember when I was a very young fella watching this catch with the song Can You Take Me Higher as he leaped up and grabbed it. I just thought that was absolutely sensational. Just replayed it over and over. It was like 240p back in the day, but still, you could still make out Paul Collingwood's effort there.
Yeah.
Of course, thankfully, we've got some HD footage of it now, but Paul Collingwood, just the fact that he had to reach above, whereas Glenn Phillips was more just to the left. I thought that was exceptional from Collingwood.
Unbelievable. Boys, let's move on. Before we get to our World Team of the Week, Rando, your stat trivia, 2 questions for us this week. You do base them generally around what's happening in world cricket, probably around Australia, India. I don't know what's coming for you. All I know is that Maxi got spanked by me last week at his own game. This week, no head starts, none of that. Rando, hit us with your best.
Beautiful. We'll start in South Africa, in Durban. A couple of records broken on the week. Marco Jansen, of course, absolutely demolished the Sri Lankan batting order, taking 7 for 13. He took 7 wickets in just 41 balls, which is the joint fewest bowled by any bowler for their 7th wicket in Test match history. Which bowler, though, did he surpass? A more recent bowler than obviously Hugh Trumbull, who he matched back in 1904. But which bowler has taken 7 wickets in 42 balls?
Scott Boland.
Ooh, do you want to? I'm going to say Stuart Broad against the Aussies at Edgbaston.
Maxi, he started hot here. That's the one. Yes, Stuart Broad. His 8 for 15 against Australia in the 2015 Ashes series. 7 wickets and 42 balls. Quite incredible. So
how many
Timmy,
Scotty?
Come on, mate. We've got.
How many did Scotty Boland finish with?
He took 6 wickets
that day. 6. Shit.
6 for 7. Yeah.
What's next, mate?
All right, the next one. Prabhat Jayasuriya. He took his 100th Test wicket in just his 17th Test against South Africa. He's the joint second fastest to reach the milestone in terms of matches taken. Now, in the last 50 years, which Australian bowler has been the fastest to 100 Test wickets?
In the last 50 years?
That would have to be...
In the last 50 years, because there's a fair few who've done it in from 1950 and earlier.
I'm going to say Glenn McGrath.
All right, I'll go with his old sparring partner, Shane Warne. Shane Keith.
None of those two, unfortunately. 23 tests for Shane Keith, 24 for Glenn McGrath. Did you want to have one more guess? There are 2 players who have hit that mark. One's a pace bowler, one's a spin bowler for Australia. They have played within the last 25 years.
Well, let's go Pat Cummins. I think his start to his career was pretty good, pretty disrupted, but I think he was been pretty effective since he came onto the scene.
Did you want to take the spinner, Timmy? Because Maxi's got the pace bowler.
Oh, the spinner in the last 50 years. Going away from Warne. How far we got? We're going back a long, long way. I don't know, mate.
25 years. He's played within the last 25 years.
Stewie McGill, ripping and tearing
it would have
through.
to be either Stewie McGill or Nathan Lyon.
Yeah.
Done. Timmy's got it. So now we've got the decider. Timmy can force a draw here. He's got Stewie McGill.
Stewie.
We can force a draw here, Timmy. This one's a bit more easier. You don't have to go back to the back of your mind for this one. The Prime Minister's 11 game, of course, was played on Sunday. India came away with the win. Poor Anthony Albanese takes an L for his troubles. But who is the most successful Prime Minister in the Prime Minister's 11? So which Prime Minister has had the most wins for their Prime Minister's 11?
You have to guess John Howard, right?
He just got the goal.
Unfortunately, he had 57%. We've got a Prime Minister who has 100% win record.
Ooh. I'm trying to think about the victories that the Prime Minister's 11 have had. And I know that in the last couple of years, they had some decent wins over the likes of Sri Lanka. I think Harry Nielsen might have been a hero in one of those games. So I might go a more modern take, and I'll go like a short-term Prime Minister, like a Malcolm Turnbull.
If they've got 100%
Timmy, would you like to answer? Yeah,
if they've got a 100% win record, it's not a long period of time. I'm going to go with Kevin 07, Kevin Rudd.
Nah, the answer was Paul Keating. He had 3 out of 3 wins.
Idiots.
Idiots, of course. Idiots.
Very niche and very good, Rando. That means we'll have to take this tie into next week.
All I'm hearing is
absolutely.
Still undefeated in the trivia, so thank you very much, mate. All right, boys, part 2 of the show, the World Team of the Week, the part of the show that we get you up to scratch on all the best performances in world cricket from the past week. We've scoured every major fixture, both domestic and international, to vote on a World Team of the Week. We then give our 3-2-1 for the best performance in the world for the corresponding week, with the votes going towards the race for the Mace, the coveted race for the Mace. The leaderboard we will have at the end of each show as well, with each player's points going towards their tally for their country. We'll determine the winning nation each month and keep an ongoing leaderboard all year round. Criteria is that there's heavier weighting to international performances for obvious reasons, and to avoid major bias, domestic Australian cricket, it needs to be a superb performance to get a start in our team. This week, it's dating back to, I think it's about the 26th of November. We need 2 openers, 4 middle order bats, a wicket keeper, and 4 bowlers in our team. I'm going to start with Rando, because there's bugger all going on for Rando. Which openers did you? Oh, sorry. Rando, you covered the Pakistan Zimbabwe.
I didn't have any openers. There you go.
Yeah, you had the first and second T20s in the third ODI, Pakistan Zimbabwe. You had the New Zealand versus England test. You had the South Africa and Sri Lanka ODI. You had no one in that nominations. Maxi, you had the Global Super League and some Australian domestic cricket. What did you find?
Yeah,
Maxi?
absolutely. No openers from the Australian domestic scene in this week's nominations. But 2 guys from the Global Super League, a tournament happening at the moment in the West Indies. Moeen Ali, he's playing for Guyana, and he scored 51 off 33 against Victoria and had 4 sixes. And then the Bangladeshi Sumya Sukar scored 51 off 42 for Rangpur Raiders versus Victoria as well. Good performances, not great. What about yourself, Jimmy?
Yeah, I can come over the top of it here, boys. I had the Abu Dhabi T10 that climaxed during the week, and I had Tom Kohli-Cadmore, the Englishman, 56 not out off 21 balls for the Deccan Gladiators. That won them the final, that knock. Exceptional. Alex Hales, 50 off 17 for the Ajman Bolts. Rasi van der Dusen. Dusen, is it, Maxi? My South African pronunciation,
Dussen.
not a strong point. Dussen. 92 not out off 41 for the Chennai Brave Jaguars. And Kusal Pereira, 74 not out off 27 for the New York Strikers. Boys, voting on this off air, we came up with Rasi van der Dussen and Tom Kohli-Cadmore as our opening spots. Rando, who did you find in the middle order batting ranks?
For me, the middle order, I looked at Tempa Bavuma, the captain for South Africa, 70 runs off 117 balls in his first innings, 113 in the second innings to put the game beyond doubt. He's 183 runs collectively, 5th most runs in a test match by South African against Sri Lanka. Next up on my list, Harry Brook, 171 off 197 balls. Couldn't go past him. His love affair in New Zealand continues. He scored 183 last year in Auckland, and he averages 100 in New Zealand. So hopefully he can keep that going for the Kiwis. And the last player I had on that list was Kamran Ghulam, Pakistan against Zimbabwe in that third ODI. Ghulam, he had 103 off 99 and took 1 for 7 with the ball.
Ooh, some serious noms coming in from you after that terror of a start in the openers. Maxi, who did you find, mate?
Got a couple for you. One from the Global Super League, Shan Masood, Pakistani, was out here last Test summer. He scored 56 off 41 for Hampshire against the Rangpur Raiders. And then Matty Renshaw, the forgotten man, he's batting at number 4 for Queensland in the One Day Cup and had a really good result last night with 122 from 99 deliveries against Tasmania. It was his second ton in 2 weeks, so good to see him coming into form.
Yeah. For myself, Johnny Bairstow, there's been a lot of English chat on this podcast, and I'm not thrilled about it. But look, we're here to not show too much bias, despite the obvious bias that we do have. Johnny Bairstow, 70 not out off 30 rocks for Abu Dhabi, and Shafane Rutherford, 46 not out off 17 for the Northern Warriors. So not the best from me, but not bad. Boys, the winners here, Rando, you all stood out big time. We had Ghulam, Brook, Bavuma, and Matty Renshaw for you, Maxi, snuck in with a bit of Oz domestic form with a couple of tons during the week. In the wicket keeper ranks, Rando, just the one nom for you.
Yeah, just Ollie Pope here for England, 77 off 98 in that first innings, including 2 catches across the 2 innings, but not much else from the wicketkeeper stocks for me.
Maxi, you had duck eggs in the wicketkeeper slot. Couldn't find a single player over there, so disappointing for myself. Again, Englishman, Tom Banton, 2 knocks, 73 off 26 for the Delhi Bulls. That was in an eliminator match. He was also run out in that with 9 sixes. In the other eliminator match that he played for the Bulls, 50 not out of 22. So what was he? 123, bit of quick maths, 123 off 48, and he was run out. So sensational form. Also the West Indian Nicholas Pooran, 72 not out off 33 for the Deccan Gladiators. Also in a finals clash, the qualifier there. Tommy Banton doing it twice, though. He is our wicket keeper for the week. Rando, your bowlers, this is where it gets hot. What have you found?
Yeah, some brilliant bowling performances across the Test series that I covered. You had Marco Jansen. I mean, above and beyond. I watched this brilliant spell, 7 for 13 against Sri Lanka, followed up by a 4 for 73 in that second innings as well. I poured a glass of wine for myself and sat back and watched the start of the Sri Lankan innings. Didn't get to finish it by the time Jansen had knocked over the entire Sri Lankan order. 7 of the players that he knocked over all got single-digit scores. It's the second most by a player. He joins the likes of Stuart Broad and Mitchell Johnson, who have dismissed 7 batsmen for single digits in a single innings. In England and New Zealand, Bryden 10 for 64 across his 2 bowling innings. He got player of the match in that game. Elsewhere, you had, and hopefully I don't get this name wrong, Sufyan McQueen, 5 for 3 for Pakistan, the best T20 figures from a Pakistan player in history. Brilliant stuff there against Zimbabwe. And of course, most recently, Jaden Seals, 4 for 5, 10 maidens in 15.5 overs. It is the second most economical Test cricket spell in history of a minimum of 15 overs bowled. So incredible work there from Seals. Unfortunately, he couldn't get the job done against Bangladesh.
Yeah, that is a serious list of nominations, man. I think they'll feature at the end in our 3-2-1s as well. A quick side story that I'm ashamed to tell, but it is what it is. Scotty Boland, when he got his 6 for 7, I started an SC Playbook Big Bash podcast, run for about 40, 45 minutes. As he started his spell, I finished it, and he'd taken his 6 or 7. I didn't see it live, and to this day, it haunts me. I had to rip through the highlights after. I could not believe flicking the TV back on it. I thought I was a G up or something. But anyway, moving on. Maxi, which bowlers have you found?
Yeah, thanks, Timo. Just the one today for a nomination, Englishman Zach Chappell in that Global Super League playing for Hampshire got 5 for 21 from his 4 overs, very solid. Also, just wanted to give a quick shout out, not necessarily amazing figures, but a really solid tournament for an Australian called Callum Stowe. Now, Callum Stowe is a young left-arm wrist spinner. I think he's going to sign with the Melbourne Renegades for this year's Big Bash. And so far in his 3 games in the Global Super League, he's had 1 for 17, 3 for 15, and 1 for 23, all from 4 overs. So good economy rate, taking wickets, and a real sort of young white ball prospect that's coming through the Australian ranks at the moment.
Yeah, keeping an eye out for the young fella there. For myself, a couple of Afghanis. Noor Ahmed, 4 for 13 off 2 overs for Abu Dhabi. Ashraf, another Afghani, of course, 3 for 6 off 1.2 overs. Unbelievable figures for the Morrisville Samp Army. Jordan Clark, 4 for 6 off 1.4 overs for Abu Dhabi. And then Tymor Mills, so many Englishmen, 3 for 9 off 2 overs for the UP Nawabs. Boys voting on this one, Marco Jansen, we had Cast there, McQueen, and we had Seals. How poor old Jordan Clark took 4 for 6 off 1.4 overs and didn't get a start, I'll never know, but that is the way we voted. So our 11 for the week, Vander Dussen, Colin Cadmore, Gorlam, Brooke Bavuma, Renshaw, Banton, Jansen, Cast, McQueen, and Seals. Maxi, your 3-2-1 voting for the week.
I'm going to go 1 point to Bryden Cast for his 10 far, real coming of age game for him. 2 points to Harry Brook. As much as I was big upping the bowlers earlier in this episode, I just think he was a world-class knock. and 3 points to Jasprit Bumrah. No, I'm just joking. Marco Jansen. He's 7 for. Amazing stuff. I'm hoping that the big fella can take home the chockies this week.
Fair play to you. Rando, what did you find?
I was going to go the same. As Maxi, but for the sake of being different, I'm going to chuck in Jaden Seals with the 1 point over Bryden cast, 4 for 5. Like that economy rate, absolutely incredible. And then my 2 and 3, I think it's the same here. I can't go past Harry Brooks' incredible knock, and of course finishing off with Marco Jansen with that amazing spell against Sri Lanka.
Yeah, look, I have gone Harry Brook 1 vote, 2 votes. Not a lot of love for who was I going with here? Going through this list, Jaden Seals. 4 for 5 with 10 maidens. And what did you say, the most economical spell of all time or something ridiculous? 2 votes for Jaden Seals for me, and then 3 votes to Marco Jansen. All righty. 3 points for South Africa and Marco Jansen. Brooke gets 2 votes for the Poms. Look, with all their performances this week, they needed to get something. And then Seals for the West Indies, 1 as well. So that leaves the race for the Mace. India on 5, South Africa on 3, and England on 2. Hopefully in a week's time, Australia will shoot up that leaderboard for our sake. Guys, that will wrap us up for the Cricketers Playbook podcast this week. Check us out YouTube if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, wherever. And also give us a follow for all our content on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, SC Playbook Cricket. Maxi, thank you very much, mate.
Cheers, Timo. Cheers, Rando. Cheers to the listeners. Looking forward to the next test.
Rando, thanks for your finest, mate.
Thanks again, and I will continue to try and get the finger pointed my way for an appeal next week because I'm sick of Maxi winning it. And I thought the fade would do it, but obviously not. So anyway, I've got a Marcus Stoinis lookalike competition to attend. See you, boys.
At least you win something, mate. Righto, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.